Hi, everyone, and welcome to the final in our series of programs celebrating 60 years of Newhouse and the opportunity and education and experience that it has provided so many. My name is Chris Velardi. I'm a 1995 graduate of the Newhouse School, and as we begin, Syracuse University acknowledges with respect the Onondaga Nation, firekeepers of the Haudenosaunee, the indigenous people on whose ancestral lands Syracuse University now stands. Look, celebrating the Newhouse School and 60 years, decades of alumni who have come through the Newhouse School and gone on to do amazing things has been true joy over the last 12 months or so. And this is the final in our program. We're going to focus on sports today. And look, I've said this before, every one of these programs, and today certainly is no different. We could literally do one of these programs a day over the course of the year, celebrating 60 years of Newhouse, to highlight all of the great alumni who have made an impact in these fields. Certainly, you know the names in sports. We are going to share some of those stories today. So let's dive into our panel here real quickly. Gary Myers is one of our alumni who is joining us today. He is an author, a sports writer. He has covered the NFL. He has covered everything, and we will talk to him about his experience. Pete Genesini is joining us as well. He's the director of network programming and podcasts at Sinclair. Before that, he was at ESPN Radio. Anthony Calhoun is joining us on the road in Oklahoma City, where he will be covering the Indiana Pacers and the Thunder in the NBA Finals, and we appreciate him making the time to join us today. He's the sports director at Wish TV in Indianapolis. Megan Cahill is the Vice President of Communications and Digital Media with the Syracuse Crunch. She joins us today as well from the communications side of things. And Noah Eagle is a play-by-play broadcaster with NBC Sports, and he will be joining us as well. So we appreciate all of you being here. And we're going to get things started with a little bit of trivia and a little bit of interactive Q&A with our audience, because we want to know where our audience is joining us from. We know obviously Newhouse folks are all over the world, and certainly here in the US. And we hope that they're joining us from different places, as our panelists are today. So let's start. If you can jump on with your phone, grab that QR code, join us. This is a pretty easy thing, no logins or anything like that required. And just let us know where you're joining us from. So I don't think you can do it, AC, because you're actually on your phone right now. But the rest of us can just take this, hit the little button, go to our phones, and let us know. Where are you? I'm here in 90-degree Syracuse, which is kind of unusual, certainly. Haven't had this since, I think, 10 months was the last time. All right. That's me. All right, NYC, we love that. Montclair, New Jersey, hello. Albany, Hawaii, there we go. This is what we like. We've got Connecticut represented. Always like to see where people are joining us from in programs like this. It just kind of reminds us that technology is pretty amazing, and we're reaching people all over the country. So understanding also that it takes a little time to get things, and you may not have an iPhone handy, and there are people joining us who are unable to weigh in. But to those of you who are hopping on and letting us know, we appreciate that. All right, we also have a little bit of trivia. These are easy trivia questions. There's no prizes involved except for self-satisfaction, which I'm sure you will have. And one of the things when we talk about sports media at the Newhouse School is the Sports Media Center at the Newhouse School. And for grads, since the time of its founding, it is something that has played a huge role in their lives, both as a student and I'm sure beyond. So when was it founded? That is our first trivia question. We'll give you a few minutes to weigh in on that. Bonus trivia question, of course, and there's no way to answer this, but I'll let somebody on our panel jump in and answer this question. Who was the founding first director of the Sports Media Center at the Newhouse School?
Was it John Nicholson?
It was indeed Noah Eagle. You're correct.
Come on. Are you sure there's no prizes? Because I kind of feel like I deserve one.
We'll send you something. We'll send you something in the mail. The current director, of course, is Olivia Stomsky, who has continued to just make that program so amazing. So 64% of our respondents have guessed or known that the answer is 2013, because the answer is, in fact, 2013. John Nicholson began the Sports Media Center. If you haven't been back to campus recently, Noah, I know you were there about a month ago, and haven't had an opportunity to see the new space that the Sports Media Center moved into. It is a phenomenal space that's just great for it's a gathering place for the students. It's a place to do work. It's a place that has a studio for radio broadcasts, for other things. It's fantastic. And that is obviously something that will continue to serve generations of students who are interested in some form of sports media. All right, let's get to trivia question number 2. And that is this is another easy one. Noah, you're not allowed to answer. What radio station is known for its student-run sports department, providing play-by-play coverage for Syracuse University's football, men's basketball, and men's lacrosse games? Is it WJPZ, WAER, WXYZ, WERW? Of course, the true radio geeks in the audience probably could name each of those radio stations and where they are and what they do. The answer, of course, is appropriately 88% of you have 88.3 WAER as the correct response. WJPZ, which I am the advisor for, so I do feel the need to shout out, covers women's basketball and women's lacrosse and plenty of high school sports as well. So go Z89, go WAER. We appreciate them both, obviously, and they're great opportunities for students to get on the air and start to do the work as soon as they get to campus, which is fantastic. All right, let's shout out one of our notable alum. And the next question is, which notable Newhouse alum became the first, or alumna, I guess I should say, became the first woman in 30 years to call a National Football League game? Was it Beth Mowins, Oprah Winfrey, Maria Sansone, or Serena Morales? Beth, by the way, I believe is calling the Women's College World Series beginning today on ESPN. And so she's a little busy, and I would be surprised if she's able to join us from that today. But Beth is obviously the correct answer there. And now another interactive question that our audience can jump in and participate in. We've mentioned a couple of names already in John Nicholson and Olivia Stomsky, but we're curious, when you think back at your time at Syracuse, who was the most influential professor that you had during your time? And certainly we'll start here with our panel. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts as well, but certainly like to hear what other folks can add to that list. Have gotten some great names as we've done these programs, just to be able to see some folks, some who are still here, some who are here in our memories and have had an influence on our lives. And it's, there you go. There are some names right there. People, you may recognize a lot of those names. And depending on the generation that you were at Syracuse University, I know AC and me and Pete from the mid-90s. Barbara Fote was one that I have to shout out as a professor who was very influential in my time. Keith Copeland, who is an adjunct and does fantastic work here as well. So it's very cool. And I can tell you, just as someone who has had an opportunity to teach at Newhouse, the relationships that I've been able to build with some of the students that I've had, even just for one class a semester, are just so rewarding. And it's so great to see their success and their progress. So thank you all for weighing in. Kevin Belby, who is an adjunct and has taught in New York City and is doing great things now with sports media representation. So love to see his name there as well. All right, let's move on to our panel discussion, but let's start with that question. And Gary, I want to start with you and ask you, when you think back at your time at the Newhouse School, who was it that stands out and had that influence on your career, your life?
Well, it might be, and thank you for having me. It might be an unusual answer, because it was a professor named Jay Wright, who taught communications law.
Hmm.
And for me, I mean, I learned so much. I think it's helped me stay out of trouble for the last 50 years in learning a lot of the different libel laws and things of that nature. And I mean, I enjoyed that class so much. I almost switched to considering going to law school because I just was totally intrigued by the case studies that we did in that class. But yeah, and then all my writing classes were great. We had a guest professor one year, my senior year, by the name of Bob Woodward. He was actually a guest speaker in one of my classes. It was right after the whole Watergate scandal, and I can't remember the name of the professor. I probably should, who had done a summer at the Washington Post and was able to bring in Bob Woodward to be a guest lecturer in a Friday morning class. I remember that specifically. So that was pretty cool. And that's the kind of thing that you can only get at Newhouse.
Yeah, those are the kinds of things that I think over the next 45 minutes or so, we will hear a lot of those types of stories. Noah, who was it for you? Who stands out as being a strong influence in your time as a student?
Yeah, it would be hard to pin down one. Honestly, Chris, there were so many that really left an impact on me. We mentioned Nicholson, who was my faculty advisor until he retired. And then I got passed along to Suzanne Lysack, who did great work with me as well. Olivia Stomsky certainly helped me into the next chapter of my life, into my career, a great deal. I'm glad someone put Keith Coblin, really taught all of us how to lead with kindness. Ken Harper, who I had for BDJ, or actually for Com 117, who really brought out a creative side. And then I had Dean Rubin for Com 107. And he actually probably was, if you're just going influential in terms of what he did for my writing style, stylistically, how much it changed from literally one semester under his tutelage, it was remarkable. So he would be up there. And then the late Dean Branham was always wonderful to deal with, wonderful for me in terms of just getting adjusted to this different stage of life, going from high school into college. So it would be hard to pin down one. I just gave you probably way too many at the same time. So I'll hope that everybody else can somewhere find that middle ground that I was unable to do.
I think that's it, though. I think it is the influence you get from so many different voices, so many different teachers that have different styles and bring different things to the table that you can take away from. Megan, I want to ask you, in your experience as a grad student, who stood out to you during that time?
Yeah, as a grad student, of course, I was only there for 1 year, so I didn't get to know as many professors there. But Dennis Kinsey's class always stood out. He kept things interesting. It was one that you were always excited to go to. But I was lucky enough to now work full time in Syracuse. So even in my professional career, I now get to work with some really awesome professors. And over the last couple of years, getting to know Dennis Denninger, Keith Coblin, now Olivia Stomsky, working with finding interns for the Crunch. So it's nice that even not as a student, I get to work with these professors.
Yeah, that's the other thing is these relationships aren't just during your time on campus. They continue on. AC, who stands out to you from your time in the mid 90s?
Well, can I say this real quick? As you mentioned, I am in Oklahoma City, and so we're literally trying to make our show at the top of the 5 o'clock. So I apologize for going back and forth.
All good.
Kind of what Noah said. There's so many incredible professors at SU, and as I've always said, it changed my life. Just the people you meet, and just having professors are the best in the industry. But I go back to two people. Barbara Folk, that you talked about. Professor Folk was awesome. She was just so good to me. Just, I learned a lot from her. Then I got to say, Rick Wright. I mean, Professor Wright, come on now. I mean, he always made me believe in myself. You're going to be a major star, major star. So no doubt, Rick Wright and those were two probably had big, they influenced me a lot. But, going back to what Noah said, there's so many incredible professors at SU. Like when I talk to students that are thinking about what school to go to, I always rave about just the faculty. Like, you're not going to find a better faculty, a better staff in the country at any university than you would at Syracuse.
It's funny that Rick Wright is somebody, if you knew him, you knew him, and you had,
Yeah.
he definitely had an impact on you. And the video that I thought that I was tossing to earlier was the one that Rick has voices it, and I was waiting to hear his voice. So I'm glad you brought his name up anyway. All right, Peter,
Yeah.
we'll close it out with you. Which professor stands out, or
Yeah, so I'll
professors?
echo Dean Rubin that Noah said, Rick Wright that Anthony said. The importance of writing was
Yeah.
it was presented to me by Tim Fox, who was a reporter at Channel 9 when I was in school. And I learned so much about him in that class that was relevant for decades to come. But I call him out among so many I think of because he's also the one who let me tag along with him the night of the presidential election that year and work in the newsroom with him and sort of see the hustle and bustle of a newsroom on the night of election day. And it showed me that there are things other than sports that happen in the world, which at the time I did not subscribe to. So it opened up a whole new reality to me. So I remember that day fondly all those years later, and I'm incredibly grateful for it.
And Tim continues to teach. He's teaching in the grad school, taught last summer, is teaching again this summer. So it's very nice to see that not only are these folks who are kind of there, but they continue to be there and they continue to influence generations of young broadcasters and young aspiring communicators in sports media. Let's talk about the changing industry, because no matter what aspect of it you are involved in, it has changed. And it has changed. Noah, you're the most recent grad. It has changed since you left college in 2019. Certainly, Gary, since you left in 1976, it's changed a little bit.
Just a bit.
Yeah, just a touch. Let's start with you, because as you know, you talk about, you look at your resume, and yes, you were a sports writer, but you also did television. You also did radio. You also did online things, and had to kind of adapt to those changes. What was the most challenging part of trying to keep up with those changes over the course of your career?
Well, I think, first of all, I worked at the Dallas Morning News for most of the 1980s. And then in '89, I came to the New York Daily News and I was there for almost 30 years. And just the whole changing landscape, initiated by the internet, changed newspapers and is now leading to the death of newspapers, which is really sad to me. But back when I was covering the Cowboys, and if I was able to uncover, a scoop, I used to sit and just pray that by the time the morning paper, and I worked for the Dallas Morning News, and we had this huge newspaper war with the Dallas Times Herald, and you used to, pray that when you go to the newspaper box in the morning, because I refused to get a subscription to the Dallas Times Herald because I didn't want to increase their circulation. Um, I would just hope that they didn't have the story that I had that I was sitting on for 12 hours. Nowadays, or towards the end of my newspaper career, uh, if I was able to come up with something that I was pretty confident nobody else had, I'd have to file it 5 minutes ago because you didn't want to take a chance on in the next 20 minutes somebody else would have it. So you'd have to write it real fast and send it in and then hound the desk to make sure they posted it on the internet rather than sitting on it for whatever reason. So I think that was the biggest change is how the speed in which you had to do the job uh, completely transitioned from you can sit and actually take your time writing the story because you had no place to put it until having to file it for an 8 o'clock deadline. And then, Daily News used to have that night owl edition, and most of you people are too young to even remember that. But it used to hit the streets in the city at about 11 o'clock at night. Um,
Yeah, the deadlines and timelines are very different now
it, it,
than they
yeah,
used to
and
be.
hey, so that to me was always the biggest change. And then, did you put something on Twitter before you actually get it on the newspaper website? And every paper would have a different policy about that. No, we're not going to put it on unless you have a link to the story to the website. But by the time they did that, somebody else can wind up with the story and beat you to it. So Yeah, I mean that was just a huge change. It's much different now that I've transitioned exclusively, in my writing at least, to just being a sports author. You know, I can kind of take my time writing
Yeah,
books.
you can make your own deadlines when you're doing
That's
things.
exactly right.
Yeah, you got a publisher who may be after you a little bit, but you got your own deadlines.
Yeah.
Again, I want to talk about the sports communications industry because it used to be that you would feed news to the journalists. Now your title includes digital media, and it's incumbent upon the teams to be able to do their own thing, make their own content. That has got to be very different in terms of the preparation for that type of role.
Yeah, absolutely. We've taken on almost becoming our own news outlet where we're posting all of our own interviews, all of our own scoops on social media. I mean, social media wasn't even really a full-time position when I graduated. It's hard to think about that, and it makes me feel old when I think about that now I'm hiring for full-time social roles. But yeah, it was, having those great relationships with local media and knowing, you can call them when you have the right story for them. And obviously that still happens. We still have that great relationship, but we're helping provide a lot of that content for them and for ourselves now. When it comes to pre and post game interviews, I have my videographer on staff filming that for our local stations and sharing it with them just to make their lives a little bit easier. I know their staffs are spread a little bit more thin. So we really have this symbiotic relationship with our local media to make sure that we are still getting covered, and we're trying to make sure that they are not running around trying to get our highlights and our post game when I'm already filming it. I already have it for them, so we're sending it over. So it really has changed quite a bit in the 10 years that I've been with the Crunch.
From a local TV sports perspective, AC, this is something that, obviously it's great when the teams can provide you with that stuff, but how do you stay relevant doing local sports? How do you continue to prove that, well, it can't just come from the team. We need to be here too.
Yeah, one thing great about where I work, we have a local, we're locally owned, and so privately owned. So it's our owner is a guy who's from Indianapolis, and so went to high school in Indy, went to college in Indy, so he understands the importance of sports and just the value of it. That sports is news, and so he's very committed to us. We feel like we're not at the game, then if you're not in the game, I mean, you have to be at the game to be in the game. You know what I mean? And so if you're not there, you can't really give the full perspective of what's truly going on and just get the inside scoop and the stories and things like that. I want to be as real with you guys as I can. So I'm literally on a crazy deadline. We're at the top of the five, and I'll give you a shot here of like what I'm dealing with. So we're getting ready for our live location. We're in OKC, and so we're right there. But we are our team. We just got our media availability just moments ago, and we're literally putting our show together now. We have a crew that's at the stadium. I'm getting ready to do all the live hits here in OKC at the top of the five. This is my teammate here. This is Zach. What's up, Zach? Hey. He's literally editing in the car. You guys know this stuff happens like that. That's just local TV, but that's the type of commitment we are. That's what we do, and you have to be there. You have to be there for your viewers, and because viewers, they know who's at the games. They know. I think one of you guys talked about just the digital platform of it. We don't just do it for TV, but we do it for digitally as well. And so to answer your question, our team has been our owner has been committed to our sports team. We have a sports team of 7 people, a full-time digital person that does all our sports digital stuff. And then, of course, we have our entire team. And so, yeah, you got to be in the game. You got to be on location because local sports, it matters. As I said before, we treat it as local news. And so tonight, I think I've got like maybe 7 hits I'll be doing from here, and I'll lead the news tonight with the Pacers getting ready to take on OKC, and then I'll come back. We have another crew here, so I'll toss it over to them across town. They'll do something on the matchup, and then I'll come back again at the bottom of the hour at 5, and I come back in at 6, and we go until 7, and then of course we're live tonight at 11. But hey, that's what it's all about. You learn this at Newhouse, you have fun with it, and you just ride with it. And it's been a truly blessing. It really has been a lot of fun.
Anthony Calhoun grinding and giving us a behind the scenes. Love that. That's something we didn't know we were going to get with this program. All right, let's shift a little bit to radio and Pete, bring in Pete Genesini. You got your start ESPN Radio kind of big time, and then now shifting to Sinclair and doing podcasts. And we've seen that happen. In fact, before this started, we were talking about, kind of the glory days of sports radio. Things still there, but things really seem to be shifting to the on-demand type of culture now, Pete.
Yeah, I think part of that is sports has just expanded so much. I graduated college, there was 26 baseball teams, 21 NHL teams, whatever it was, all these leagues,
Yeah.
30 some odd teams, all the women's sports, the rise of women's sports, all of the different soccer leagues. It's not possible to cover and be interested in all of it. So when you turn on sports radio, and if you have the right talent, you can cut through. But if you turn it on and you're talking about a sport that I don't follow, and I know that I can go over here and get conversation about a sport or a team that I do follow, I'm gonna go for the proven commodity. That's why I think you're seeing the rise in city-based podcasts, team-based podcasts, sport-based podcasts. Is I might not want to hear about who won the golf major yesterday on a Monday. I want to talk about Alabama football in the middle of June, right? And you can find a place to go do that. But what I do think is as interesting, if not more interesting, is what a podcast even is now. Yesterday, I got on the treadmill and I wanted to catch the most recent episode of my company's Buffalo Bills podcast done out of our Rochester station called Buffalo Plus. And it used to be you'd put your earbuds in and you'd listen on your phone or whatever the device was. Now I point my remote at the YouTube app on my television and I pull the show up there and I watch it as if it were a television show. But technically, I guess I'm listening to a podcast. Like it's even hard to quantify, like, what is it I just did? I just know there was a Bills show and I did something with it. And we're still trying to get our arms around measurement and how to even determine what some of these shows are.
Yeah, now content is content, and it's just available really wherever you want to get it. And speaking of that, Noah, Pete talks about the growth of sports. You've certainly covered many sports during your short career and going back to Syracuse. And I feel like you've done it on pretty much every platform available. You've done it from network TV to streaming services to regional cable to a kids network. So, I mean, there are opportunities out there to cover pretty much all the things and do play-by-play for all the things.
Yeah, first, let me start by saying I'm glad that AC showed us that there is a working car with him, because I was a little concerned with all the vegetation that he was just getting ready for his golf invitational in a couple weeks. So I'm glad that he's actually on call working in OKC. That's big time. Yeah, it's been really cool, to your point, Chris, to see in the last 6 years since I graduated just how much things have already evolved. So you mentioned I've gotten a chance to call games for now NBC, CBS, Fox over the course of the last several years. I've called games locally with Yes Network on television, done radio locally. But then there's also been games that I've now done directly to Peacock. And then this past year on Christmas, doing an NFL game on Netflix, which is a completely new world that we're entering within the play-by-play sphere. And then, of course, the Nickelodeon games, which I did 5 of. And so the way I look at it is this, and I think that everybody in all of the backgrounds that we have and all of the departments that we work in can probably agree that there's never been a moment within sports media, really media period, where there's been more opportunity to seize chances, more opportunity to create your own path and to go out and really take it instead of waiting for it to be given to you. With that, I think it's also probably more challenging now not to get typecast into maybe what you do first. And so for me, the first thing that I really hit on was the Nickelodeon broadcast, in which we had slime and augmented reality and virtual reality and characters that some people knew and some people didn't. And Nate Burleson and I are trying to make sure that we're including all the 90s babies that grew up watching Ren and Stimpy and all that, and Guts and everything else you could come up with. And so it would have been easy for me to just become the alternate broadcast guy, which to a certain degree I was heading towards. The Clippers then said, you know what, we want to do that. So let's do a kids cast with you. You're still young. Let's make it so that it's just for kids and you're going to do that. And I was like, okay, because at first you say yes. But I think that the biggest key in all of this is because there's so many opportunities early, as we've always talked about, this is not something new. You say yes, you become a yes man or a yes woman and figure it out along the way. And once you've established yourself enough, then you've got to really focus to make sure that you can be somebody that can be seen as versatile enough to do all of it and conquer all of it. And so I think that's still the challenge. But because there's more opportunity than ever before, just from a play-by-play perspective for now, you look at the streamers, you look at going and saying, hey, this is a really high-level high school basketball program that streams their games and they need somebody to call them. That's massive reps if you can go and do that. Or a low-level college that's doing the same thing. It just didn't exist before 15, 20 years ago. It certainly does now. So if you're willing to look for it and willing to grasp it, you can make it for yourself.
I was beginning to wonder if there was a special class that the class of 2019 at Syracuse took for alternate broadcast between you doing the games you did on Nickelodeon and then your classmate Drew Carter doing games with Big City Greens and The Simpsons. I wasn't sure if there was just something in the water or a special class and with the
he got Toy Story too. So it was a battle of, we had SpongeBob versus Toy Story. I'll take my guys SpongeBob and Patrick all day. You do not mess with those guys, especially considering SpongeBob is voiced by Syracuse native Tom Kenny. So just overall, I feel like we've got that Central New York blood coursing through his veins.
It all ties back. It all ties back. I want to talk a little bit about the business because obviously it is a business. And what you guys try to do is make it enjoyable for the fans, whatever the fans happen to be, whether they're fans going to a Crunch game, fans watching a basketball game, listening to a podcast, reading a book, whatever it is. So how do you balance that, the messiness of the business that can make some people feel a little bit kind of uncomfortable or even maybe angry about where things are with sports, with what it's supposed to be, that escape that people are enjoying. And Megan, I'll start with you because you are on the team side. How do you find that balance?
Yeah, it really definitely is a balance. We always say it at the Crunch where we would love to always be, the top priority for people, but sports are not always the top. We are entertainment field at the end of the day. We provide a little bit of reprieve for someone, on a Friday, Saturday night in the middle of winter, they can come to a Crunch game, enjoy some time with their family. So we do that by keeping it fans forward all the time. We're really lucky to have our season ticket base and our loyal fan base. We've been in Syracuse for 31 seasons now, and that is because of the strength of our fan base and the support of Syracuse. So we always have to keep that in the forefront, and that is done by all of our community appearances, all of the funds that we give back through the Crunch Foundation. So we like to do everything we can to support the community that obviously supports us. At the end of the day, it is still a business. We need to sell the tickets, we need to sell the sponsorship. So it is kind of that balance between, you are trying to sell a ticket to a game, but look at this theme night we have coming up. It's in AHL hockey, we're lucky that we can kind of go outside the box when it comes to theme nights and specialty jerseys and cool games and teddy bear tosses and things that you might not always see at the NHL level. You're watching players who in the next 2 to 3 years are going to be superstars in the NHL. So it's cool to be at this level, and that's what we really enjoy about this level. So we can kind of, I don't want to say hide that it's a business, but we are selling entertainment and we're selling the future superstars of the NHL. And I think our fans appreciate that. And we keep them coming back for more because we are allowing this behind the scenes access. We're giving them everything they want on social media. We're listening to them on social media. What kind of content do they want to take in? Do they want to get to know these players off the ice? We're providing that. So we're creating this relationship with our fans, and they really get to know our players on a personal level, and that makes a fan for life.
Not everything needs a great segue, but Pete, since you started with the Crunch when you were still a student, I'll jump to you next and ask you about that balance with these podcasts that you're doing. team specific, city specific types of podcasts where you want to be the voice of a fan, but at the same time, it's a business and you kind of can't make the team angry at you either. So how do you find that balance?
Yeah, one, thanks for highlighting that I'm a million years old. I was there for the very first season of the Crunch, and
I was in school for that too. It's all good.
what they have done and what they have sustained is remarkable. So my congrats to Megan and everybody associated with the team. I would say the business of sports piece in connecting it to the listener, which is always where you start, or the viewer, is the why. That why does this matter to you? Why does this impact the performance of the team or the state of the league, right? So right now, the college football playoff, are they going to go to 16 teams? Is the SEC getting 5? Is the Big Ten getting 5? So on and so forth. So when I'm working with an Alabama podcast, look at it through the prism of how it impacts them. When I'm working with a Syracuse podcast, how does it impact the ACC? It's perspective and relevance, and making that connection to why it should matter to you or to your fan base. And if you can't find that, maybe you find a different angle for the show that day.
And Noah, you cover college sports. You do the Big Ten games. You've done the basketball. That balance, particularly with college sports in the world of NIL, in the world of revenue sharing, where there is some, I don't know if resentment's the right word, but fans have a different perspective. But you're still calling a game. Do you try to balance those things?
No question. I think that just comes with the territory. And I always go back to the adage that's been passed down now within the Newhouse world for generations from Marty Glickman. And that is, consider the listener, or if you're on TV, consider the viewer. What do they need? That's really what our duty is. And our duty to them is to both entertain them and inform them simultaneously. So if it's required, or there's a situation that makes sense, for example, AJ DiBonsa, arguably the #1 recruit coming out of high school this year, is getting paid allegedly $8 million to attend BYU next year. It's widely known that that's the case. And so if you have that first BYU game next year and don't mention that, you're probably doing a disservice to your viewers by not at least informing them of the biggest news, which is him making this large sum of money to be there. But if you're harping on it for an entire 5 possessions and talking deeply and adding your opinion into it, then you're overcooking it. That's not your job. At least that's not my job. It's others' job. If you've got a podcast, if you've got a radio show, if you're writing an op-ed column, totally get all of that. Then unleash it. You're on First Take, go for it. But for me, calling the game, I need to report the information as it's given. And this is true with all NIL, and this is true with any NBA free agency drama or trade drama with Luka Doncic going to the Lakers, whatever it might be. You report what's known, you report what's given to you and what's fair game for the air, and then you move on and you call the action and you combine entertainment and information all in one, package it for the viewers and let them kind of take the rest on their own.
No, you started by saying lesson you learned at Newhouse. That's where you began that. And Gary, I want to go to you and ask you, is there a lesson, or are there lessons that you learned at Newhouse that you kept coming back to during your career as a sports writer and you use now as an author?
How much time do you have left?
Yeah. Well, Anthony has a live shot at the top.
Yeah. Okay. I don't want to get away with that, even though his team beat the next team I follow. But clearly I learned so many things at Newhouse. Probably the thing that has stuck in my head all these years is you want to be right. You don't have to be first. It's better to be right and first, but if it's one of the two, you want to be right. And so I always had that, carried that with me through my career. Now, the interesting thing about what my journey was is I was in newspapers, for nearly 50 years, but 40 years actually. And I did TV for 25, like you mentioned at the beginning, Chris. I did Inside the NFL on HBO from 89 to 01. And during that period of time, now we see the proliferation of insiders now. I'm just specifically talking about the NFL now. Everybody's got an insider. Everybody's got a podcast. Everybody, there's a million websites. ESPN's got, no, you might know better than me, even though you don't do ESPN, but ESPN's probably got like 30 or 40 NFL insiders now.
Every team's got at least one, and then you've got at least 3 or 4 national at this point.
It's really amazing. But back when I did Inside the NFL, it was me, and then on NBC there was Will McDonough. So I was really the second one, and then then Chris Mortensen came along, and then later Adam Schefter, and the whole generation that is all over the place now. And even, I don't want to say even though, but it was HBO and it was a paid cable channel, and it was huge then. It's even bigger now. But I still took that responsibility so seriously of making sure the information I put out there was right. Because not only was our show on Wednesday or Thursday night, we switched back and forth every now and then for the first airing, but they would air it 3 or 4 times. So it would live for 3 days. And you had to make sure that, you don't want an announcement coming up that was going to either contradict the information you had or outdate it. As far as the newspaper part of my job, I remember in the early 80s when I first got to Dallas, I printed a chart with a story of all the Dallas Cowboys salaries. Now, to me, that was just continuing what I had learned in New York, which is where I grew up and kind of learned what the business was about. I had the public relations director, and it was a big deal in Dallas. Nobody had ever done that before. I had the public relations director of the Cowboys call me up the morning that the salaries were printed, and he goes to me, "You hurt my family." I said, "Oh my God, I'm sorry. What did I do?" He goes, "You printed our player's salary." I said, salaries. I said, "I didn't realize that was your family. I thought you were talking about your wife and kids or something like that." And I said, I'm sorry. I just can't apologize for that. I mean, what do you expect?" He goes, "Well, that's really nobody's business." Now you fast forward to today. And that's all we hear about is what a player makes and the salary cap and the impact. So what I told him that day is, okay, maybe it's never been done in Dallas before, but my readers need to know this because this is important in how your team does business and how the players, the Cowboys had this reputation as this glitzy organization, but they didn't treat the players all that nicely in contract negotiations. And I thought it was important for the fans and the readers to know what these players were being made, especially in comparison to what players were making around the league. But it was upsetting to team management. But I never worked for a team, and certainly didn't work for the Cowboys, so I really didn't care, to put it nicely, what they felt about what I was writing. So you face that battle when you're covering a team and you're completely independent of the organization.
Yeah, and to Noah's point, now we're learning what college players are making, so it is definitely out there. AC, because you're up against deadline, what's a Newhouse lesson that has stuck with you since your time here? Oh, you're muted.
He didn't learn to turn off the mute.
Yeah, it's a more recent thing.
Sorry about that.
All good.
My apologies. Let me just tell you, number one, how much I love my university, right? I'm literally on a crazy deadline trying to make sure we make this hit at 5 o'clock. So that's how much I love SU, how good it was to me. I go back kind of what Gary said. I always one of the things I learned in Newhouse, you can be first, but you better make sure it's right, right? And so that's kind of been my mentality in the 25 plus years I've done this, is you always want to be right. Not necessarily first, but you want to get it right. And so every story that I do on television, I feel I have a sense of responsibility. I don't want to mess things up. I want to make sure my story's right. As you talked about families, yes, when I'm talking about high school kids, I want to make sure I get their names right. I want to make sure I got the right stats about these kids because, we're telling stories. It matters to people. And so that's one thing. And then you got to be able to adjust as well. As Megan was talking about, hey, listen, we're in times now where clickbait matters. People want to, whatever is entertainment, right? And so the way I approach that is this, you got to be able to compete with everybody else, right? So you got to be smart. You got to know what's going on. But at the end of the day, you still have a responsibility as a journalist. You got to be right in what you report. And so if you're not first and you're second, but you're right, I'll ride that all day, all day. sorry to be short, but I gotta literally get on TV. But I love SU. Noah, I'm coming after you. You're always coming after me. I'm coming after you. Pete, great seeing you. Yeah, there's nothing like our alma mater. It's awesome. All right.
Have some good shows, Anthony. Thank you so
Okay.
much
Thank you
for being
guys.
a part of
Appreciate you. Okay. See you guys. Yep.
Megan, I'll move to you now, and because your curriculum was maybe slightly different, what was something that was a lesson that you learned at Newhouse that you see yourself using all the time?
I think it was that I was in the public relations program, and I think it's that your future job isn't going to fit perfectly in a little public relations box. It's not just going to be pitching to the media and writing your press releases and making your phone calls. You are going to be able to do so many more things, and you're able to learn even once you're in your position that you might like a different element of sports media a little bit more, and you have the opportunity to kind of be a little bit more flexible and learn more about what opportunities are out there. When I first started, I was hired as a public relations coordinator, and that's what I was doing. I was just doing the PR side of it, and now I'm overseeing our digital, I'm overseeing our photos, our video, our website, our social. It's kind of overwhelming sometimes how many possibilities there are in sports media. So we're lucky that we get so many interns that come to us from SU, and they're always so well prepared. And it's nice to give them that real world opportunity, because not only are interns helping us out in areas, we're giving them the opportunity to figure out, is this something that I want to do? Do I want to go into this career? Do I want to work in hockey? I interned with the Crunch when I was at Newhouse, and it gave me my first opportunity to really get into sports and realize this is the career I want and this is what I want to do. So I appreciated having the opportunity both in my internship and in classes to learn so many more areas. We were introduced to Photoshop and Adobe programs that I had never had when I was in my undergrad. I didn't know I wanted to really go into public relations. I learned a little bit more about video, and now that I'm in my position, I can handle all of this stuff because of everything I learned at Newhouse.
Versatility is important. Having a lot of skills, a big toolbox is always important. You talked earlier, Megan, about relationships, and I want to, as we come towards the end of our time here, I want to talk about relationships, because above all else, with the technology and the business and the changes and everything, the human relationships are still really important in everything that we do. And certainly when we talk about Newhouse, we talk about the Newhouse network. So I want to ask each of you how you have used it, how you've seen it in action. And Megan, I'll start with you, and you talk about the network because you're bringing interns in from Newhouse. So it's something that you're kind of helping to perpetuate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I graduated and I decided I wanted to work in hockey, the first thing I did was log on to the Newhouse Network, and I went through every single alumni that was working in the NHL, and I contacted every single one of them, and every single one of them said, yes, I absolutely have time to talk to you about what I'm doing. One of the people that I really connected with was someone who had graduated right before me, Adeline Olivia Olive. She's now public relations director for the Florida Panthers. They're going for another Stanley Cup, and I still stay in contact with her because she gave me a little bit of insight on what her role was. I mean, she was only a year ahead of me, and she was just new in that position, but she still took the time to answer every question I had. I reached out to so many people who were so welcoming and made time to answer all of my questions so I could figure out what I wanted. And that was kind of what set the precedent of, if you're a Newhouse alum, this is how you treat other students. You have to share this knowledge. You have to give them that opportunity. And every student that's ever reached out to me, I'll make time to get on a call with them or get on a Zoom or answer their emails, because it was those alumni before me who really made me feel comfortable in pursuing this career. And then obviously now with all of the interns that we have, we could not ask for a better school to have students come to us from.
Gary, I'm guessing during your time, you've crossed paths with a few Newhouse folks.
It's a really amazing, just traveling around the country covering the NFL, like, I did for all those years, how many Syracuse students I would, alums rather, that I would come across covering teams. And even at the Daily News for a while, we had a bunch of, Rich Cimini covered the Jets for the Daily News. He was a Syracuse guy. Ralph Vacchione covered the Giants for the Daily News. So the three football writers, including myself at one point, were all Syracuse grads. Um, I'm not sure the Newhouse network existed, like it does today back when I graduated. So my way of staying in touch really is in 2015 and 16, I taught a class at Newhouse, a one credit class in the spring on expressing sports opinions on multiple platforms. And so I did that for a couple of years, and we had like 16 or 18 students. It was a once a week class, and I've stayed in touch with some of the students. And John Nicholson is the one who brought me into doing that, and he and I became really good friends. And then after a couple of years, when my schedule didn't allow it, I passed it, and I didn't pass the class off, but I asked Rich Samini, who had guest lectured in my class for a couple of years, whether he wanted to do it. And he's just taken it and run with it. And he's done it for, since 2017, he's done it every year. So I feel that was kind of our way of giving back to the university, is by letting them benefit from whatever experience that we've had in the business. And Rich particularly has had amazing guest speakers. Noah, he's got to have you next year, with all the experience that you've gathered in your young career. And your dad might have already spoken to this class. I'm not sure.
Yeah, he has.
Yeah.
I think it was like the worst day of class of the year, but he did speak.
Yeah. I'll make sure I pass that along next time I see your dad. But yeah, I mean, the Newhouse network just in general is just listen, I say this and admitting that I'm completely prejudiced, but it is by far and away the best communication school in the country. When I went, we used to say, "Well, it's the best communication school in the Northeast," but now there's no qualifications anymore. With the faculty and the alumni base and the contacts that the students really want, students that really want it. There's so many people. The Syracuse people we take care of each other when we're in a position to do that, and that's really the best thing that current students have going for them, is that there's such a wide base of alumni in every aspect of the business that they can rely on.
Yeah, to Megan's point, who are always willing to pick up the phone or answer an email or whatever. Before I get to Noah, because I will end with Noah, Pete, give me a Newhouse network story from your career in the field.
Yeah, I think broadly the culture of feedback that we have, the ability to give it, but also the ability to receive it. When we were in college, I overlapped with Anthony when he was at WAER, and right after a broadcast, or as a broadcast was going on, "Hey, did you think about this? Why did you do this here? Hey, I love that nugget that you did," right? And so we had this culture in all the different aspects, JPZ, Citrus, whatever it is, and we do that. And what'll happen is someone will graduate and go get their first job. Let's say it's radio. If their station has a program director, he has no time to give you feedback. So I would say to people, like, who's making you better? Who's telling you what you did well or what you didn't do? And if the answer is nobody, then call us. Like, we'll do it for you. Send us what you did. And Noah knows this. We'll give you the kind of feedback that's helpful. When we hear good job, that's helpful to our ego, but that's really it, right? Someone will say, "Hey, I love that nugget you dropped about that player," or the way you laid out on that game-winning shot, or whatever that was. And by the way, it works in the opposite direction, in that I'm in my 50s now, and I speak with people who've just graduated who are significantly younger, and I can share my experience. But then what I'll do is I'll give them a homework assignment. "Hey, here's a show we just launched. I'd like you to take a listen to it and let me know what you think, because I want to know if it resonates, at that point." So feedback isn't just old people giving it to young people. It works in all directions, and we know how to give it, and we know how to receive it, and we know how to use it. And we have a rich population of people that are here to help.
It does go in every direction. No, I will leave it with you. Obviously, you've got Syracuse literally in your blood, but beyond your family, I'm certain that you have had an opportunity to experience the network in action.
No doubt. I think the overarching theme that all three of these guys hit perfectly is paying it forward, and that really is what I felt when I was there. It was what I felt before I got there, and has certainly been felt since I've left, both directions. Both I felt it from others and I've tried to then give it to others. But I mean, I'll use Megan as an example. When I was a student and I needed a story for the Crunch, she was always there willing to help because she knew that it was going to be much harder if she wasn't the person as the conduit. Pete was always great coming back to talking to everybody at WAER. And obviously Gary mentioned the class that he was teaching that Rich has now taken over and really expanded on. I just think those are great examples of what Newhouse means to all of us. We want to leave things better than we found it, which is not easy considering the great shape that the school has been in for the 60 years now of sports media that we're celebrating. But on top of that, I think that you're always trying to evolve. And then as you get into the workforce, what stands out to me is every place I've gone, there's always been a Newhouse person there, and usually more than one. And there's an instant bond, instant connection. Exactly what we did in the beginning of this call. Oh, who'd you have? Who are the professors you like? Oh, Barb Fote. Of course, we all had Barb Fote. You just start going into those memories of WAER 6 a.m. as a freshman. That was fun, right? I walked from Brewster all the way across to Ostrom. That was really good. Yeah, that's 10 degrees as I'm going to religion and sports in a life science building. You took that too? It just always starts to roll and snowball. And then it's a bond that doesn't go away, and an easy way to create more friendships and widen that network. And I think that there's this misconception, and I said this when I was back about a month ago, there's a misconception of what networking is all about. And this applies to the Newhouse network too. I think that people just think, okay, you have to go out and network and just broaden the people who can help you one day. And I just never looked at it that way. To me, networking is you're just broadening your network of friends, of people that you enjoy being around, people that you've genuinely gotten to know. That's what I learned at Newhouse is all the people that I was around, all of my classmates in my 4 years there. I just genuinely got to know them. And now there are a handful of them that are doing incredible things in the business. And you never thought when you were first meeting them or asking them about the sports teams they grew up rooting for or asking them their dog's name when they were 7, you never thought, oh, this person one day is going to call, let's use Drew as an example, the Boston Celtics games every single day. Or this person is going to go on to have this elite talk radio career or is going to be a top PR person here. You don't think about that. You just create friendships. And I think that's what the Newhouse Mafia is all about, is creating those friendships and then understanding that you can lean on them if you have to. And people are willing to lean on you, and you are certainly willing to help. And so I love that aspect of Newhouse. It's really what I think makes it so much more special than everywhere else, is because there is that feeling of paying it forward from everybody. And I hope it never ends. And I really don't think it will.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that too. I think that's one of the things I learned at Newhouse is networking isn't really a verb. It's a noun. You build a network, but you build a network by building relationships, by making those friends, right? Asking somebody what their dog's name was, that kind of thing. So I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that you and your dad have a podcast, a Cuse Conversations podcast coming out, I understand.
I believe just dropped, I want to say. Yeah. Father's Day edition, which means I need to get him a Father's Day gift. So any ideas would be greatly appreciated.
Sounds good. Well, thank you guys for being a part of this. These are the conversations that I'm certain that if we were sitting around, and I'll just throw out a place, Fagan's, could go on for hours and hours and hours. We are under a time limit here, but we appreciate your time and being a part of this network that will continue to go on and to serve generations to come. So thanks to you for being here. Thanks to all of you who joined us online today for this program. This is what it's all about, right? It's all about the opportunities, the education, the experiences, but really the people who have made Newhouse what it is over these last 60 years. We're all excited to see what Newhouse will be in the next 60 years. And we're all excited as alumni to continue to be a part of it. So thank you for being a part of it. Thank you for being here today. And as always, go Orange.